Now,
Okay.
go.
What is the first thing you do when you wake up? Brush your teeth, wash your face, eat breakfast? Imagine not being able to eat breakfast, not being able to eat your favorite cereal or pastry. Imagine feeling so hungry that you feel as if your body is digesting your internal organs. That is how 43% of children feel every day. The most that a starving children eats a day is less than 1,200 calories a day. That is like eating only 2 McDonald's Big Macs. Because of these conditions like this, children's lives are being ruined. And now with more on the definition of starvation is Vaille.
Okay. Starvation is, most simply, the lack of the most basic necessities, food and water. When one is starving, their body begins to burn muscles for energy, reduces calorie requirements, and develop nutritional deficiencies that produce bone loss, amenorrhea, constipation or diarrhea, rashes, and several other medical problems. An international standard for measuring hunger is the Body Mass Index, or BMI, which refers to an individual's weight relative to height. The internationally acknowledged threshold for a normal BMI is 18.5. A BMI between 17 and 18.4 is considered undernourished. A BMI under 16 signifies a person is starving. Government estimates measure 35.6% of Indian women and 34.2% of Indian men have BMIs less than 18.5, which means that in addition to those who are starving, many other people of India are at least undernourished.
As you can see, starvation is more than just not eating for a day. There are many facets to starvation. Maddie is now going to describe the causes of starvation in greater detail.
Okay, so the causes. Deregulated imports relate to the globalization, which is the process of international integration arising from the interchange of worldviews, products, ideas, and other aspects of culture. Globalization has caused India to end the system that guaranteed domestic market access for farmers that brought food security. Since India has open trade, its agricultural imports have quadrupled. This results in a huge surpluses, which are dumped into the global market that causes prices to drop since there is no longer a high demand. Deregulated exports increase a large amount of agriculture to be exported, therefore resulting in a declining amount of food available for consumption. With government restriction, minimum wage workers receive around 115 rupees depending on the location, which is equivalent to around $2 an hour. This does not allow workers to afford nutritious food. According to the Department of Statistics, the cost of milk is around 35 rupees and the cost of a bag of apples is around 120. People are more willing to spend their money on products that do not cost as much, so they are able to afford more food. Social and gender injustice and inequalities play a major role in poverty-stricken areas in India. Discrimination against women ensures that they are poorer, less educated, and face more unemployment and health risks than men. This does not mean that women are more susceptible to starvation than men are, but many of these factors play a key role in measuring poverty in a certain area. Ineffective and inefficient government organizations are put into place to help overcome hunger, malnutrition in certain areas. These groups are not well managed or organized. This leads to decline of productivity in the targeted areas. Some of the groups include National Food Security Mission, National Nutrition Mission, and National Policy on Farmers. Without proper management, these groups do not have a positive effect on the community. Lastly, with the lack of political will, the National Food Security Bill has not been passed. This bill is to provide for food, a nutritional security and human life cycle approach by ensuring access to adequate quantity and quality food at affordable prices to people to live a life of dignity. The bill guarantees legal entitlement of food grains at a subsidized price to around 67% of India's population. It has been passed by the Union Cabinet but needs to be approved by both houses of Parliament.
Starvation is more than children going without food. It reflects poorly on the entire country. Vaille is now going to describe both the effects long-term and short-term of starvation.
India's hungriest states, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh fare worse than the abysmal national averages in the national nutritional indicators, including height for weight and age of children and mortality rate for children under 5 years old. A Wall Street Journal article tells the story of an Indian man, Mr. Hazra, whose village ran low on food and had little construction work that he could perform. His family went days without food, and he grew thin and weak until he was physically unable to work. Mr. Hazra died the night after his interview with the Wall Street Journal reporter. This is just one example of the chain effect that low food count has had on Indian individuals and families. A government response to a starvation death requires public officials to admit that one happened and that it was a result of negligence or corruption. This is difficult in the villages of India due to the fact that they are often plagued with health problems in addition to the lack of food. Even with proper attention being paid, the effects of prolonged starvation to the body can take between 6 months and 2 years to reverse.
Nobody wants to see a child go without food, but if there's one person that hates it the most, it's the mother. I can only imagine watching your child starve is unbearable, but here to tell us more is Cleo.
Okay. Like Maddie said, one of the major causes of malnutrition among Indian women is gender inequality. Women eat last and the least amount in the whole family. The intake doesn't contain enough of the nutritional value required for a healthy system. So the women are anemic and they never reach full growth. Because of their health, they are unable to give birth to healthy children, and that's why the kids become even sicker once they can't even have food. So this is a story by Suraj, her name is, and she says, "We live on a day-to-day basis," Suraj says, "with the faint sound of hammering echoes across the village. What we earn is what we spend on our families in a day. These families are living day to day, wondering where their next meal will come and if it ever will come." And another story is Poonam, and she's living in a small village, Gan, and she sits inside one of the huts, and she's a little girl, Poonam. She's 3 years old, and she has kidney failure because she's eating dried bits of mud and silica, which she finds in the quarry, so she can't find any other food. And she chews on it because she's hungry, says the mother, and it makes them very sick. And she says, "I can't buy my daughter food, so how would I ever buy her medicine for her kidney failure?" And then another quote is, they don't give the name, but it's just a mother, and she's sitting with her children by the river, and she says, "Where do we get the money? We usually eat food only once a week. Last night we went to bed without any food at all."
Mothers are not the only ones whose life is drastically changed by hunger. Some children are born into hunger rather than begin to starve later in life. Cameron is now going to tell us about the child's perspective of starvation.
Well, the thing with India is that, well, even around the world, hunger isn't necessarily just in India. It's all over the world. And it affects families, it affects children, it affects the entire nation. But what I want to talk about now is how these little guys, they are getting hurt the most. At such an early age, they're experiencing such pain and emotional pain, physical pain that they can't eat. And it really destroys them. And when you look at it, there's more produce in the entire world to feed the entire human race twice over in a year. And why isn't that produce going to these guys? It's a mixture of people who are greedy and a mixture of people who don't want to do things about it. And what I really want to tell you guys is what happens to a child. First, when there's no food, the child is stunted. As you see with North Korea, there's an entire generation of people who are 3 feet tall, and that's as tall as they're going to be. They're not midgets. They're just stunted at birth because they didn't have enough food to grow. And they die slowly in agony because there's nothing for them to eat. And it's really a sad thing to see these babies just coming out into the world and they die in a few months if they're lucky, because there's literally no food for them to eat. And it's really just sad. And it's not, as Cleo said, it's not like coming out in the world and you have this start to come out and you're already built up enough so that you can survive a few days without food. For babies, if you're not fed every few hours, you're going to die. And it's really sad and horribly disgusting to see that people would allow innocent babies and innocent children to starve to death when they have so much food around them to help. There's nothing that we as a self can accomplish, but as a whole, as a world, we can make India see what's going on, and we can make them do something about it.
Starvation is something that we should prevent so that no family has to suffer like this. There are many ways to get involved. UNICEF accepts monetary donations in order to provide meals to starving people around the world. The WDF is working to bring fortified wheat flour to families in India, which adds essential vitamins and minerals to the flour that help people grow. Giving food is not always the answer. Awareness is key to helping. The Indian government needs to be held responsible for the people of this country. Another thing that can be done is introducing social services to the country that can help family put food on the table. No family or child should continue to live in these conditions. With our help, their lives can eventually be changed for the better.